everybody. So happy to be here. I wanted to record today. We might, again, record on Wednesday, but just because it's Chaf Shvat, also wanted to share a story and then go into our marriage lecture series. And also share with you, even before that, something that I've learned that just was one of those aha learning experiences. Even though once you really think about it, it makes like total sense, and it's not maybe so revelationary. But some reason when I read it, I was like, wow, and like it just moved me. So I was actually at the Chaf Shvat on Shabbos, and there was a rabbi there, I don't remember his name, who gave a couple of stories. Then I heard a story also in Shul, so maybe we'll just, in her honor, since it's her weekend, mention some of these stories. And one of the stories actually was of the Rebbitzin, who actually at one point had issues with her feet, and some person was chosen, a Jewish man, a podiatrist, to come visit her and do treatments in the house. And one time the Bachor actually saw this man come out of the Rebbe's house and was like really curious, of course, and then asked, what's this all about? Why are you, do you know whose house this is, and why are you there? And so this doctor said, no, I don't know, I just have a patient here, I'm doing a home call. So he says, this is the Rebbe, the most famous Rebbe in the whole wide world, and you're treating his wife? Did you know that? He goes, no. So next time around he comes, and to honor the Rebbitzin, he put a kippah on his head, so that as respect. So the Rebbitzin said, oh, wow, so interesting that you're wearing the kippah. Why did you decide to do that? He goes, well, I found out, and I wanted to honor you by putting a kippah. And she asked, is this something very difficult for you to do? He said, no. So then she said, can you please promise me that something to do that's like for me and to honor me, but that's very difficult? So he says, he thinks about it and goes, yes, I will. So then she says, can you promise me that you're going to marry someone Jewish? So he's like, oh boy, that is kind of a big one. And so then he actually agrees, and according to what I heard, and I could not write things down, so don't quote me on exact numbers, but there was a matter of maybe over 10 years that he kept meeting people that were not Jewish, and he really liked them and wanted to marry them, and he tried dating Jewish people, but for whatever reason, he didn't like them, and it was just like years. Finally, this was after she passed away, like he's still not married, and he happened to meet someone, and they said to him, why don't you go, to the Ohel, and see if you can get a bracha from the Rebbe. So he went to the Ohel, he asked the Rebbe, please, told him the story, and like days or maybe a week later, he found this woman, and Baruch Hashem, he ended up marrying a Jewish woman. And another story that I heard in the shul was of a situation where a story of the Rebbitzin, who actually, I also read this in a book, that during the time period when there was war going on and bombing where she was living, she happened to be crossing a street, and she saw that there was a bomb approaching nearby, so she ran and pushed this man to save his life. And after she was asked, like, wow, do you realize you saved this man's life? It wasn't for you. Mama, you risked your life to save him. And so she said, well, but I pushed a Jew, and for that I have to do tshuva. Like, it really hurt her. She wasn't like, wow, I did Mishras Nefesh, I risked my life. She was really focused on the fact that it hurt her so much that she had to push her, with her own hands, someone.
Who was this?
This is a story about the Rebbitzin. I believe it was on.
The Rebbitzin?
Yeah, the Rebbitzin. Chaim Mushka for the celebration of her yortzeit that was this weekend, Chafei Shvat.
So where was she? Did she sit
Back in, was it, maybe it was France, I think, or somewhere.
No. I heard that she was actually in her house with someone started in Chachanam. And like, I know the whole vidui. And every day she does a whole vidui for this.
Every day she said vidui for this, that she pushed it to. Wow. That's amazing. That's like almost like the story of was it the one who did not save Yosef from the pit, Reuven, and he was like with sackcloth and every day like doing tshuva for the rest of his life for having not run to get him out of the pit right away. Anyway, so okay, so that's Hashem. We should just all emulate our Rebbitzin and day by day and step by step trying to emulate her ways. So what I was learning in Kuntres Umayan, back and forth I quote Kuntres Umayan, especially when I see clients, because people who have very severe psychiatric problems, I read that section, I think it's on page 47, that says like the higher the soul, basically the higher the lights, and the higher the lights, they need proper measurements to be able to contain that light. And that mental and emotional disorders basically comes from the lack of creating a vessel to contain that light. And mainly it mentions emotional and like intellectual dysfunctions, because that's where it creates the imbalance, when there's a lack of this vessel. So like for a while now, I've been really wanting to study the whole book in a better way, because I'm like, even this one paragraph is like a secret, like, wow. It's like if all therapists and all social workers and all psychiatrists, especially Jewish ones, would know this, they would, instead of right away prescribing something, say, look, try out this route, do a little more learning, do a little more davening, or is it something that you used to do and now you're not? In most cases, I've seen that the people that haven't done what they used to do, like they, for whatever reason, did less of something, or in a very critical way, like a woman who used to go to the mikveh, or a woman used to learn in seminary and daven, and then all of a sudden she got married and then doesn't do anything, then that's always been the case. Every person like that has come my way, or that they just never did Tarat HaMishpacha properly. And yesterday I opened an igris for a man who the wife was really concerned because he's been diagnosed with manic depressive, and I opened the igris, and in the igris it said that this kind of disease happens from the parents' lack of Tarat HaMishpacha, and that the family themselves can do tshuva for the family that didn't do the Tarat HaMishpacha, and that will be a way by which there could be a cure. So I was like, wow, because it's so true. Like all the people who I know who have come to me with manic depressive, they all told me that they had not kept Tarat HaMishpacha properly. Meaning they themselves. And I know also people who their parents didn't. So and I had read it in a different book, but then again I got, reminded about it from Taharat HaMishpacha. The letter that I just read, it was like letter number 103, I think in volume 6. I'm not exactly sure, but I have it saved there. I'm going to document it somewhere. So critical. So in Kuntrus Umayan, been wanting to really study it. I got to a place where it gave also another life-changing kind of information, for me at least. And it says that, generally speaking, we know this. In this world, people seek pleasure. It's just a fact. Whether it's in food, or whether it's in shopping, or whether attention and pleasure from our spouse, or whether respect from our children, it feels good to us. And the reason is as follows. Up in Shemayim, when our soul was with Hashem, we had such pleasure with Hashem. And we're used to pleasure. We want it. We desire it, the holy pleasure. So what happens? The Yud and the Hey separate. The Hey comes down into this world. And the Hey in Hashem's name that's within us is yearning and longing to be with Hashem. It's used to pleasure. It wants the pleasure. It's looking for the pleasure. And when it doesn't have it, then it's it feels lost. It feels almost maybe cheated, as it were. I always had it up in Shemayim, so I want to come down here, and I've got so used to it, and if I don't have it, I really feel awful. I feel lost. So the Yetzer Hara knows that we have this desire and this yearning to return to Hashem and experience that perfected pleasure, and then lures us into the world's pleasure and tricks us that if we don't have this pleasure, if we don't have that pleasure, and so we're very easily ignited and attracted to the temptations of the worldly pleasures. And then what happens is, by giving into it, it starts blocking us and creating heavy-heartedness and creates a dullness in our heart to really connect to the true pleasure. Because Torah and Mitzvahs doesn't give us a quick fix pleasure. So it's okay, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm doing everything for Hashem, and I don't feel anything. I don't get that pleasure. So what's happening is, the more then we give in to the quick fix pleasure, which is really empty, which doesn't really lead us to an ultimate pleasure, then ends up taking us away also from the real pleasure, because eventually Torah and Mitzvahs do allow you to experience some pleasure in this lifetime. And I know we have, all of us experience, those aha moments of, let's say, some kind of gewaltic davening that we have, or, the happiness of making our children happy. It's such a pleasure when they're so happy. Or the pleasure of when we know that there's some charity that we have given to someone who really would have been kicked out of the house but for we having saved the day. There is an intrinsic holy pleasure that we have experienced, but day to day, the more we give in to the non-holy pleasure, the more than when we daven or when we learn, then it kind of blocks us and we don't feel it. So the holy pleasure, yeah, because that's what we're used to up in Shemayim, and that's what we're longing for, and we can only have a limited amount on this lifetime because we're in a body, and total revelation of Hashem's light is only going to happen when Mashiach comes, or partial revelation, even when the tzaddikim and whoever are in Gan Eden aren't as complete as when Mashiach comes. But the fact is that the more we indulge and exchange that quick fix of a temporary type of pleasure that's really beyond indulgence, let's say, what have you, then that's going to block us from being able to experience the real pleasure. And then we're forever feeling a loss of the pleasure. We're forever yearning for that pleasure because we're not then experiencing it as much with Torah mitzvahs because we're opting out for quick fix, as it were. Anyways, so that was what I actually kind of connected to in a way that I never did before because, like, sometimes we can be so hard on ourselves, like, why did I just give in to that? Like, it's just such a stupid pleasure. I know that it's going to give me a headache, or I know I'm going to, like, what am I? Like, and you can almost feel lonely on yourself. Like, who are you that you just totally, whatever, I go through that. And the actual teaching by the Rebbe Rashab says that it then sidetracks our ultimate mission in our life. And then we'll relate this hopefully very soon to marriage. For instance, we know that a vegetable gets eaten up by the animal. So the animal elevates the vegetable. We eat both the animal and the vegetables, and we elevate both the animal and the vegetable. So who then is going to kind of eat us up and going to elevate us? Well, when we learn Torah and we wrap Hashem around us, Hashem then elevates us. And that's our goal. But if we make our primary focus on life the pleasures of the world and yearn and go that route, then the Rebbe Rashab says then we become lower by the pleasure. So that not only do we not get raised up, but we then either take the characteristic of the food we ate or the thing that we just got involved in. And that's like opposite of the mission of why we came here. We're coming in this world to be like enveloped by Hashem's Torah and mitzvahs to then have it elevate us. Anyways, so I'm going to just review also the last week what we learned in very brief, and this leads to this teaching that when a husband and a wife learn Torah together, then Hashem's Torah elevates both husband and wife, and the teaching is that the woman only has 5 koichos of gvura, and the 5, if you look at the hay, is very expanded. And that hay comes from the word isha. She has the hay of Hashem's name in her. The ish has the yud in the word ish, and yud is 10. So he has 10 faculties of gvura, but his 10 are very unexpansive. Yud is very puny. It's there, but not developed. So the woman has 5, and she's lacking the 5, but her 5 are very substantial and very complete. So when they learn Torah together, the fire of Hashem's Torah encompasses both of them, and then each other are together, fusing off and mending and melding together, so that the woman starts to attach herself to her husband's 10, and the husband attaches himself to the woman's 5. And again, through learning Torah, the Torah wraps of So then together, they get elevated together. Now, so if she learns and he learns, they also get elevated by the Torah. But there is nothing like the husband and wife learning together to be enmeshed together in the learning so that each other's faculty that is lacked will be fulfilled. So that's another answer. How am I going to get my husband too? What the heck? Instead of being nitpicking and pointing finger and getting on top of him, which no husband likes to marry a police woman nor his mother. He married a wife not a policewoman, and not a watchman or woman or a mother type. So instead of like focusing on what you need to do to fix that guy, then you think, wow, by learning Torah together, Hashem is going to fix him through my powers that are latent there in me that will be able to be enmeshed in him. And what's in him that I'm lacking, because we both have something the other is lacking, then that's going to bring the results more than any word I can say, more than any criticism. And remember, we were bringing out the word tochacha. If you look at the word, it's toch-cha, and cha equals ahava. If it's not coming from a place of love, it's not going to work. And usually, when do we criticize? When we're annoyed. When our ego's a little bit on fire. Just like anything in halacha, you want your body to work, you follow the laws of the Torah. You want your mind and your heart to be like equalized and balanced, you follow the Torah. You want X, Y, and Z in your life, parnasa, you follow the Torah. So you want your rebuke to be able to affect the other, you follow the Torah. And the rebuke, if you look in the Torah, there's laws how to rebuke someone. You have to follow it, so then it'll work. But if you go on your own groove of what you feel like doing at the moment, and especially if you're in a state of anger or disgust toward the other, if it's not coming from a place of love, it's not going to affect the change in the other. So I think we're on chapter, did we do the kissing? Yeah, I think we didn't do the kissing part. Okay, let's do that. Yes, Mazel Tov! Wow. Wow.
She was like in labor for a week.
No, I was 2 weeks in labor, literally for both my children. Oh my gosh, I know. It was. I know. Me too. Wow. 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 So last time we had the class, we discussed the 5 levels of communication. I just will review it real quick. Words of love, words of rebuke, words of praise and admiration, words of control and direction, and words of gratitude. So, interesting, right where these notes are, although it's in a later chapter, since we did talk about Torah study, it says here, Torah study is likened to death. Since when they both, they study together, it entails dissolvement of the ego. Because when you leave your body, I guess, goodbye ego. So when you study Torah, it's like death, because you're really, as it were, killing off your ego. So Rabbi Ginsburg actually says the actual act of conversation with your husband becomes a binding agent, and in this way, we have to really focus our attention on rectifying our speech, because we were also learning that when we speak, if we really focus on how to speak less, like vanities or things that are not going to get us anywhere, because at the moment we feel like saying it or whatever, then it affects the way we think. Speaking and curtailing our speaking actually cures the extraneous thoughts. from and diminishes all kinds of like bombardment of thoughts by paying attention to how we speak. It says here, idle talk is the source of all foreign thoughts that invades one's mind when he's trying to pray or when he's trying to learn or serve Hashem. So, and this comes from Torah Or, and so we also know that because of lack of speech, the sin of the apple took place. Because when Adam and Chava it was Adam who was commanded by Hashem, and he was supposed to relate it to his wife. But basically, he didn't really take the time to really explain all the details of these laws. And then she got confused, and when the snake said, "Oh yeah, you're not supposed to touch it? And try touching it, nothing will happen." So she touched it, nothing happened. So then he was able to then convince her to eat the apple. So it really, sorry men, but it really was your fault. Like if Adam had spent the time conversing with her and dealing with the situation in a very detailed manner, the sin would not have happened. So it's just beautifully written here that when the couple then spend the time conversing with one another, especially as they participate together in their knowing Hashem, they actually have such a wondrous union with Hashem's infinite light, which there is no other union, and there is no other parallel anywhere in the material world. So then they become one with this unity from every side and every aspect. And then they actually become a part of this process of revealing Hashem's will in the world. And it's so beautifully written here. So when the twin fires, meaning the light of the intellect, the male fire, and the light of the woman's fire gets like infused and enmeshed within Hashem's one fire. And all of the three partners become one. So now we're getting to the chapter that talks about kissing. Now, when we work on rectifying our speech to one another, then our desire to want to kiss one another increases, basically. But in Mystery of Marriage,
What did you say?
when you rectify the way you speak, because too much talking, too much pointing fingers, too much conversing in a way that's not healthy toward one another, then the desires for bonding in a physical way begins to diminish.
But I just want to really get to the 1, 2, 3 of how to do it. It's all just about, because all our stuff just seems so natural to me. It makes sense. Like, oh, I could have come up with this on my own. Like, you know,
Right.
I could talk to a horror in the womb.
Right.
I'm wondering, how do you actually break free of this habit? Or
Right. Oh, so in a nutshell, the more you bring Holy Torah in your mind, the more. The previous class we were saying from Basi Lagani even, it says the way to change your feelings about things is to change the way you think about things. Once you change the way you think about things, you'll feel differently about it, and then you react differently about it. So the way to change the way you think about it is by coming to these classes, learning, filling your mind and your mind with these kinds of thoughts, but mainly through meditation in your davening. Because if you're learning, it could just stay the peripheral way. When you bring your learning into your davening experience, specifically at the Zelle Or bracha where you stop and meditate on what you've learned, then it actually has a power to become ingrained in your brain. The Or Makif of Hashem's Torah becomes inner food for your soul, so that you could live what you learn, so that it could actually help you react and behave differently because the knowledge now is in your mind. So most people don't think, learning, okay, I'll learn, but then they don't really have a good davening.
Do you make meditative CDs that you actually speak on them and allow for?
Yeah, I have 100.
You yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I can loan it to you. You can download it on your. I don't. Do you download? Oh, okay. Because I have an MP3 with 60, and I have another with 22. I have.
But the main ones that you used to sell.
Yeah, I have. I think I get. Yeah. Okay, so I have other ones. Yeah. Yeah. It's the second CD. I think I gave it to you, but there's one CD. The second set, and each one has half an hour meditation. And each class that is on my phone line usually ends up with a meditation. So you have to get. Right, I understand. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I'll see if I have it here. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Right. But by the davening, like I do the specific meditations every day without having to look it up, because in the end you really remember it after doing it a couple of times, another couple of times in your davening. So it says here that when we use our mouth, peh equals 85, and if we use it properly, we will then reach a level of kindness and love. Ahava is 13 and Chesed is 72, which equals 85. So it says here, defective or frustrated communication between spouses can make either or both of them lose their desire to kiss. So we also realize that when we are learning Torah, we're kissing Hashem. Because when our breath speaks words of Torah, Hashem's breath is activated because He created the world and the Torah with His breath. So when we use our breath with Torah, then our breath is united with His breath, and then we kiss.
And then we do the opposite. It's like we're throwing knives.
Yeah, basically.
Which is why you don't actually feel each other in your life.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and this relates to how we're going to bond with our spouse. So, because really Hashem intended us to use our faculty of speech solely for Torah. And you shall speak of them and not other things. And even when we engage in mundane conversation, it's really meant to be infused with holiness. Being kosher is easier than this. Refinement, speech is like all of the work. I know. My neighbors come over and all we do is schmooze for hours while our kids play about nothing. Right. So then bad thoughts also get into your head because you're just not. Well, first of all, there is a class that I once learned on Lashon Hara. It's kind of a Gavordic class, but it helped me. If you want, I can share a couple of tips. No, but I find it true for me. Like when there's an Indian is, as long as you like hold yourself back from speaking Lashon Hara, like no judgments come to you. But when you speak Lashon Hara, all of a sudden Hashem has to judge you. Like Hashem has so much rachamim that He'll say, oh, if she doesn't speak Lashon Hara, I'm not going to judge. All of a sudden, everything you talk about is this issue, that issue, that's all we do. You're around money. Right. Well, by using air element in your davening, by using air element in your Torah learning, then the Sitra Achar can't snatch your air element for vanity. Okay, let me say, look. Let's say you have a private property, but now you forgot to lock the door. You put the gate is open and the windows are open and there's no private property sign. Then anybody come in and a cat can come in, do its stuff there. A beggar or a drunk can come in and do its stuff there because nobody took that property and like made it theirs. So when the air element is not used, It's like an abandoned property. Nobody's showing that it's using it. So Yetzer Hara comes, Sitra Achra, an animal soul, then use the air element and use it. Speaking. So how do you have more power over your speech? By using your speech for holy things. That means a person who has no control over their speaking, it's a sign that they're not using their speaking for their davening. Maybe they're davening and they barely are moving their lips. Or maybe when they're learning Torah, they're not saying the words of the Torah.
Okay, so on a practical level, let's say there's about 20 other mothers there.
So share with them a Torah knowledge. Share with them something that you learned. You can be a lamp lighter, and you can turn the whole place around by you.
I'm not comfortable with that. I'm not comfortable like people because when people try to do other stuff to me, I'm like, oh, you're turning me off the Torah. Leave that. But if you think embarrassing advice,
yeah, it doesn't have to be.
You have so much health advice to give.
That's a holy.
My neighbors who think that all that stuff is crazy, so I never open my mouth. I was just like, yeah, okay, let's talk about the Torah.
So then maybe try to raise money for a girl who's now, like, we're trying to fight custody for her and raise money for her school tuition and use your mouth for raising funds. And there is something holy instead of the opposite. Or don't speak. Who says you have to speak? If you so feel uncomfortable.
I wish it was possible, just like, five of these things, you can just like zip it off your lips.
Yeah.
The hardest is even like, right, like if you're in an environment where they're saying it, you can't be like. Yeah, I would never.
No. Yeah. So then either, like I was once at a table, everyone was speaking Lashon Hara. I got up and left.
Good from you.
I said, I'm not going to sit at this table the rest of the night with all this schmutz. I didn't want to tell them off. I don't know who they are. They didn't know that I left. Maybe I left to whatever. I made it like I went to the bathroom, sneaked out for a little bit, and then came to the opposite room so they couldn't see me. Then I purposely moved away.
What they had is being pulled in strong directions, like never remember where we're at. Like it's like, oh wait, I had planned today was the day I wasn't going to speak myself. I planned today was going to be the day I was going to be sane and normal. And then it's like, wait, life took over. And I went, where?
So the main reason that can happen is because, and I'm not saying in your case, but the davening helps your godly soul.
Yeah.
The godly soul gets to be able to be in your body through davening. So if someone doesn't really daven or quick, I only said the Shema, then no wonder you're all animal soul and you can't control your mouth. But everyday's davening allows your godly soul to permeate, so then you have a battle between the godly soul and the animal soul at least. But hold on one second.
Sometimes I think that is if we can just control what we say, like you always say this, Miriam, like you just control our words, that in itself is almost like the secret to happiness. We just control our response, our word system. I know.
You're like, I have too many things on my plate to even think straight with whatever my plan was in the first place. It's like I have to wear like goggles.
Right, so you have to do the meditation daily and visualize yourself. Your husband said this, the child said that, but I have like a key closing my mouth and throwing it out, and I'm quiet and I'm humble and I'm like whatever. I'm soft-spoken if I speak. I'm not. And that takes training of everyday davening. The davening, I know it's hard to hear, but the time of davening is intellectual wherewithal. Your mind gets stronger doing davening. It's a time of supernal intellect. Your chokhmah bin and das attaches itself to Hashem's chokhmah bin and das. Yes, it is about, thank you, Hashem. Yes, it's please, I need this. And yes, it's a time of I want to grow in my love for you, Hashem. But it's also a time of supernal intellect. And those of us who have little mastery over our emotions, those of us who have a challenge not keeping our mouth quiet, then need our mind to get stronger. And even, as I said many times before, Dr. Sarah Lazar of Harvard University took the brain scan pictures of those who prayed and meditated. And she saw that their brains were different. Their cortex lining were thicker. They had less empty space between the grooves of their brain. They were smarter, more refined, and they had less dementia and aging of the mind and all kinds of Parkinson's and aging of the mind kinds of diseases.
This is for Hinduism, for people who don't have children and for people who can meditate on top of a mountain all day. I mean, that's, you know.
I mean, I know if I didn't have children, then I wouldn't be able to relate. But trust me, I 100 and a zillion % relate. But the more you're desperate, the more you find a way to do it. And I was super desperate at the time. And I waited 8 years till I had my baby.